So we just want to bring us kind of right back to the beginning, where I started just highlighting the distinctions between the sanctions regime and the AML regime, and just that reminder that what we're talking about today, the legislation coming in May, is very specific. It's very focused on the sanctions regime, and the AML regime remains unchanged. It's crucial to understand um, how these differ. And because they are very different. In some ways, they're very similar. The same team, as I said, may be responsible for both and for compliance with both. And that's, again, very common. It's a very natural linkage between the two, but actually there are some very clear differences. And so hopefully this little quick slide here will just help bring some of those to life, and there are others. These are just some of the key ones. So the focus, straight away, we've already talked about the focus is very different from sanctions to money laundering. Money laundering is focused on money laundering and the proceeds of crime, and sanctions is focused on the designated persons and preventing the breaches. Um, there's no monetary threshold, which is very different between the two. The sanctions regime is not prescriptive. It doesn't tell you how you must be compliant. That's kind of for you to figure out what's right for you and your firm. And we'll talk about some practical steps as we get into the Q&A. Whereas the AML regime is prescriptive, it is very kind of clear. It gives you clear directions as to what you need to do to achieve compliance in most cases. Um, the regime is strict liability for sanctions, whereas the AML regime is a risk-based approach. Reporting is different, and also the control element and where we think about ownership. And there's two very distinct differences between the two regimes. So it's important, and I would encourage you to, after today's session and when we share the resources, take a read of the guidance for sanctions and make sure that you do, if you're working with entities, understand the control, understand the definition around it, because as you can hopefully see from this slide, there are very clear differences.